All right, happy Friday, guys. I'm having a little breakfast here, and I was thinking that I might just share some of my early experiences in plein air painting. All right, I'll warn you, this could be rambling and seem pointless, but I know that when I was a beginning painter or I was starting on this journey, that I probably would have appreciated to hear some of the challenges that more experienced painters experienced in their early stages. And for me, plein air painting was a huge challenge on many levels. I mean, number one, I was just kind of, I don't say, well, maybe embarrassed, or not embarrassed, but just, yeah, self-conscious about setting up in a public location. I mean, that was sort of, and I'd had experience playing music and performing and stuff like that, but something about just setting up your easel in public and painting a painting, definitely a horrifying thought or scary thought. So there was that to overcome. Then there were the challenges of finding what to paint, like trying to figure out what I wanted to paint, and spent a lot of time driving around and just felt like there was a lot of wasted time, and I would drive home feeling really discouraged. And then the final thing was just the result of my early plein air paintings. Like, it took me a while before I even had one where I felt like, oh, that's really good. It seemed like in the beginning, my studio work, when I was painting from photographs, you know, I was having a much higher success rate. Once I went outdoors, the paintings the quality went way down. All right, so first thing I'll talk about is setting up in public and getting over that fear. The first plein air painting I did was in, my dad and his wife have like a large backyard that had a big garden with kind of a pond in it. And so I just set up in the backyard just to kind of work out the kinks. You know, I bought a French easel, and so I just wanted to kind of set it up and do a painting outdoors just to break the ice in a place that was private and comfortable. The painting was terrible. Did not work out at all. Like I said, that's where I noticed where from my studio work that I had been doing, this thing just seemed like I was back to square one. So I did that, and then I decided, all right, I think I'm ready to kind of move on here and get out in the real world. And so I picked a place that I felt like was really remote. I went over to the San Mateo County coastline, which you've seen me paint there. That's kind of my place to go now when I want to plein air paint. Rolling hills, green hills, not an ideal sort of vista, just because it was just all green. So I set up my stuff and I got going, and I felt like, all right, at least I'm out here. There's no one around. Well, shortly after getting set up, one bike came by, then another, and then just, it seemed like hundreds of bikes. And somebody even made a comment, or like, oh, look, it's Van Gogh, or whatever. You know, I have my straw hat on. And definitely an uncomfortable situation, just because it wasn't like one person passing by. It was like painting, and just for 10 minutes, people going by. So it was kind of just getting, you know, just right into the fire there. To this day, I don't think I've ever encountered more people during one painting than I did on my very first public outing. But anyway, I continued to paint outside and even sort of explored some areas in the suburbs, which I'll get into. And it was still like very, I was always very nervous setting up my easel, like say on a suburban street or whatever. It took a while to get over that, but I found that the nervousness or the self-consciousness typically was while I was standing around waiting to set up my easel. Once I was painting, once the brush was on the panel, I was so lost in the process that I wasn't worried about whether people were, you know, judging me or whatever. So I think just through experience, just doing it over and over again and just shutting off the fear and saying, I got to do this. I'm going to, you know, it's like, I remember in my head just going, just set up the easel, just set it up and go, you know? And I did. And every time, once I was painting, I was fine. So that's what I would say about that. But it did take a while to overcome that. Now I'll set up anywhere. I mean, I'll set up in the city. San Francisco is one of my, you know, I do enjoy painting in San Francisco, and I have nonstop conversations. And, you know, people walk by my painting, you know, you guys have seen my process in the early stages. It's super loose, whatever. And I can tell people walk by and are like, ooh, wow, you know. And sometimes people will say, oh, is this your hobby? And I'll say, well, I actually do it for a living. And they're like, really? So I think I just understand that people don't get the process. And so if they see a painting that's just blocked in, they're going to think, wow, that poor guy, or that's not really working out. So I can tell a lot of people just keep, moving on. And so I don't care anymore. Now it's just, I enjoy being outdoors. I enjoy painting on location, and I'll set up anywhere. I don't care. The next challenge in painting plein air early on was figuring out what to paint. And I spent a lot of time driving around. I worked Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, and I had Tuesdays and Thursdays off. And I would drive around on Tuesdays and Thursdays trying to find stuff to paint. I didn't know what to paint. I knew that I liked Edward Hopper's watercolors, which was kind of a surprise. Somebody gave me a book of his watercolors, and they're all plein air paintings, and they're mostly in New England, but I really liked the vibe of them. It was kind of like a mix of, rural settings, mostly on Cape Cod and Gloucester and everything. There was like architecture, but also nature. Love that. Love the vibe of those paintings. And so that's kind of what I was drawn to do. I also did like the early California painters too, which were pure landscape, but I wasn't really drawn to pure landscape at the time. So I wanted to do architecture, which led me into like suburban areas where I'd be trying to paint houses and whatever, but I couldn't find anything that reminded me of New England, So, it's like, here I am in California. I got to figure out what it is about this landscape that inspires me. And many times I would just drive around on those Tuesdays and Thursdays, which I felt were precious painting time. And I would drive around for hours, maybe take a few pictures, and then I would go home defeated because I couldn't find anything to paint, or I couldn't figure out how to paint it. And I did occasionally, I would set up. I remember setting up and painting some shadows on some houses and everything, but I just, and then I remember I was like, oh, I like that house, but it's not by the ocean. There's just trees around it. And so sometimes I would just like paint the ocean in the background, or whatever. But yeah, those first years it was challenging, And so, like I said, many times driving home feeling defeated, like I'd wasted the day. I hadn't though. I mean, it was part of my creative journey to go out and have those failures. Which eventually led me, I think, to painting on the coast here and just embracing landscape, if for no other reason than it's what California is about. And also, there is so much beautiful natural areas here that I really love and appreciate. And I just felt like, well, if I get out here and I paint landscapes, this is going to probably help my studio paintings when I paint from photographs, and it absolutely did. So that was a big thing that allowed me to enjoy painting, was figuring out what it was I wanted to paint. And in my case here, it was just the challenge of painting landscapes, like pure landscapes, no architecture or anything like that, because we don't have a lot of architecture near the ocean. And then the final one was just being happy with the results, or accepting the results from my plein air journeys. In the beginning, I think I was really judgmental about my work, and I was frustrated when they wouldn't come out or wouldn't turn out. Now I still have plenty of paintings, as you guys have seen if you watch this channel. There's tons of paintings that don't work out, and that's part of the process, and I now appreciate that. I appreciate that because I know it's a growth opportunity for me. So I like it when I go out. If I go out and I do something, I'm like, wow, this didn't work out. I will go home and I'll work on trying to figure out how to make that painting work. Like, what is it that, what is it that didn't work, or how can I make this better? Can I change the composition? Whatever. So yeah, so now my failures are seen as opportunities for growth. So I've kind of had a shift in the way I approach plein air painting. So yeah, just wanted to share this with you guys because I know the early stages of getting out and doing plein air painting can be really challenging and really frustrating. But I'll leave you with this final thing, and I've said this a million times on this channel, but the one thing I want to impress upon you is to not judge the plein air paintings themselves like for success. When you go out, it's like lifting weights, okay? If you get a good painting out of it, great. But basically what it's like is lifting weights. It's training. When you go into the studio, you're going to be a much better painter. I would not be the painter that I am without the years of plein air painting. painting from life. And if you don't want to plein air paint, or you're shy about plein air painting, even doing like a plein air still life, you know, where you set up something outdoors with sunlight and you set up out there, you know, painting from life is a huge growth experience. So I really want to encourage that. And then if you are looking to get out onto, you know, into more public areas and stuff, just, you know, just do it and keep doing it. It'll become comfortable for you, and the benefits for your studio work are going to be substantial, I would say. It is a great way to grow. So anyway, just wanted to check in with you guys, and just had some thoughts and wanted to share them. So that's it for this video. Let me know what you think in the comments. If you struggled when you first started, or you're struggling now, we'll get a little conversation going on down there. Have a great Friday, and I will see you guys in the next video.